Good afternoon. My name's Charlie Baum, and today we're going to be talking about an equilibrium in a supply and demand diagram. We're going to be talking about a market equilibrium. First, consider a graph where we are plotting the supply and the demand for a product, such as the supply and demand for smartphones. A market equilibrium mechanically is going to be where the supply and demand curves intersect each other. This will show us a situation in which quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. At this intersection point, there will be no pressure for the equilibrium price to change, and there'll be no pressure for the equilibrium quantity to change. In the example that we're viewing in the graph, the equilibrium price is $200. That's found on the graph's y-axis, and the equilibrium quantity is 10. That's 10 million smartphones per week. At any other price, the market is not at an equilibrium, and there will be pressure for the market price to change. To see this, let's consider a different market price. Let's suppose that the market price is $250. According to this graph, when the market price is $250, consumers only demand 9 million smartphones per week, and producers are willing to supply 11 million smartphones per week. When the price goes up, consumers are not willing to buy as many smartphones, and when the price goes up, producers are willing to supply more smartphones. So the result at a price of $250 is a surplus. The size of the surplus is the gap in between the market supply curve and the market demand curve at the $250 price. For example, in this specific case, the surplus of smartphones is 2. That's actually 2 million smartphones per week. This is not a market equilibrium because of surplus, but it's not a market equilibrium because we don't expect that price of $250 per smartphone to remain. In particular, we expect downward pressure on the market price. When producers realize that they have supplied more smartphones than consumers demand, some of the producers may begin to offer their smartphones for sale at lower prices, at prices such as $240 per smartphone or $230 per smartphone. Producers would begin to lower the price so that they could be the ones sell their smartphone. And at the same time, consumers will begin to offer lower prices because they'll see that there are excess smartphones on the market, and they'll realize that they can buy a smartphone for a price below $250. This downward pressure on the market price will continue until there's no longer a surplus. In this diagram, there will be downward pressure on the market price until it reaches the equilibrium price of $200. At this price, there'll be no more pressure for the market price to change. Now let's consider a market price that is below the equilibrium. For example, suppose the market price is only $100 per smartphone. At that low price, producers are only willing to supply 8 million smartphones per week. But consumers at such a low price are willing to buy 12 million. This results in more smartphones being demanded than are supplied. And the result is a shortage of smartphones. The size of the shortage is the difference between the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied at the $100 price level. In this graph, that's a shortage of 4 million smartphones. When consumers realize that at a price of $100, they may not be able to buy a smartphone because of the shortage, consumers will begin to outbid one another. Some consumers will begin to offer $110 for a smartphone. Other consumers will offer $120 for a smartphone. This will continue putting upward pressure on the market price level until there's no longer a shortage. We expect there to be upward pressure on the market price level until the price level reaches $200 per smartphone. At that price, there'll no longer be a shortage. We don't expect a price of $100 to persist because of the shortage. An equilibrium in the market is a price at which there's no more pressure for that price to change. At any price, in this example, above $200, there will be a surplus, and that'll put downward pressure on the market price level. At any price below the equilibrium price level, there will be a shortage, and this will result in upward pressure on the price level as consumers begin to outbid one another so that they can actually obtain a smartphone instead of being part of the shortage.